It's Dave Chen, SKY. I'm David Chen, the editor of decodingeverything.com. I'm joined by @JoyO'Napping. Joy, thanks for chatting today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
All right. So what we're going to do today, first of all, I want to mention a huge shout out to all the patrons in the chat right now at patreon.com/Dave Chen. Really appreciate everyone who is supporting my work online and helping me to do what I'm doing. That applies to all the work that I do at decodingeverything.com, the Filmcast, and also Decoding TV. It's greatly appreciated. On this broadcast, what we're going to do is we are going to discuss the 2024 Oscar ceremony. We just finished watching it. We're going to talk about what we thought about the ceremony itself. We're going to talk about what we thought of the awards. We're going to talk about some of the biggest surprises of the evening, some of the biggest things that were disappointing of the evening. So let's get into it, Joy. The first thing that I think is well worth mentioning is that this is an Oscars overall that felt well run and on time, which is quite shocking. I've watched many Oscar ceremony over the course of my life, and virtually every single one has felt like it was going overtime and it was like out of control in terms of the logistics. And this one felt like they actually ended, they actually ran out of material and ended early. And I have to say that was refreshing, given that everyone seemed like they got the opportunity to say what they wanted to say. There's very few speeches that were played off. Like overall, I thought this was an enjoyable broadcast, which is pretty rare to say because there's been some pretty big travesties. Joy, what did you think?
I thought so too. And I was sitting there thinking, look, you have a room full of incredibly charismatic people who are professional entertainers. How hard is it to make a show out of them interacting that is entertaining for me, the viewer? And for some reason, many years, it feels like it gets really tedious and really bogged down. I think they did some clever things. I'm sure there will be think pieces about this tomorrow to save time in transitions. But fortunately, we got to cut extraneous bits like, I don't know, Hollywood celebrates 75 years of Westerns, and it's just this montage that sucks all the energy out of the room because nobody really wants to sit there and watch a montage. Instead, we had, I think, funnier bits. And most importantly, we got to hear more of the speeches and more about the nominees. The biggest format change that is most obvious is having prior winners of the acting awards giving tributes to the acting nominees one at a time. And that felt really great. I was concerned at how much time it would add to the show. And in fact, I think it actually elevated the show.
I thought that was also really nicely done. I think it started with Best Supporting Actress. Now, I have to say, I think the Best Supporting Actress presentation set the bar too high for the rest of them because it
I
seemed
know.
it seemed like virtually every single one of those women knew the person that they were talking. Like they're like, "You're my friend, and I love you, and I'm so happy that you know." And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, are all the actor nominees going to be presented like this?" And then as the night goes on, it becomes clear some of these people don't know who they're talking to, maybe haven't even seen the movie, they're just reading off a prompter, and it became less heartfelt over time. But I agree that first Best Supporting Actress presentation, followed by a very heartfelt speech by Davine Joy Randolph, who won for The Holdovers, really was very powerful and emotional. So,
Well,
yeah.
also, you see, of course, actors and actresses come back from different generations, different eras, movies we've loved in the past. To see um Davine Joy Randolph, like, paying tribute to her grandmother with the glasses discussion. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember this
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah, that was
There was
nice.
just this feeling of, like, tying together history in a really beautiful way, and, Lupita was there, wore a dress that was a reference to the dress that she wore when she won this award 10
hmm
years ago. Like, I just really you felt the sisterhood, and you felt the sort of history of this institution in a positive way. You're right, it didn't hold up for the all the other presentations, and I wish it had. But I still think even as a concept, it's really lovely.
Yeah, and I think overall, like we said, very well run broadcast. Very few surprising, weird, shocking moments. There's been so many moments in previous years that have been. I think the word I'm searching for is a travesty. Just something horrible happens, like the wrong Best Picture is read, or there's no
Someone
host, and
gets
the whole thing's
slapped.
someone gets slapped, right? Right, like it's it's become kind of de rigueur for something terrible to happen to the Oscars. Nothing bad happened. Jimmy Kimmel as a host, I thought was very competent. Really, just down the middle in terms of the opening monologue and some of the other jokes. Uh, the only moments that I thought were like tense were like him bringing up Robert Downey Jr.'s past when Robert Downey Jr. clearly doesn't want to talk about that anymore, and also love that he just went after Gerard Depardieu randomly. That was great. But yeah, I thought overall like a completely competent host and a solid broadcast. This is kind of some of the best of what an Oscar ceremony can be. Now we can talk separately about whether that is relevant in today's day and age, but I thought this is like a very solid broadcast. Any other thoughts on the overall broadcast in the evening?
I don't know if this is why, but there were more. I think there is a push from social media and TikTok to have more unscripted little moments that can either be memeable or seem more candid. And so I thought there were more chances for ad libs or funny reaction shots in the audience that were built in because people know who are producing the show that it's going to clip 3 seconds will get clipped out and will become a little mini story for how people actually consume this the next day. So I actually thought it really met me much closer to where I am as a viewer in how I consume media today.
Mm-hmm. Some really weird, notable moments to bring up from the evening. I would say John Cena presenting best costume while seemingly wearing no clothes at all and just having the envelope cover his private parts. Uh, I was just watching John Cena in Ricky Stenicki, the Prime Video movie. He's very enjoyable in that, and you got to admire somebody who's willing to commit to the bit. And I think that John Cena my admiration for him increased this evening watching him do that bit while seemingly completely naked. So, yeah, wanted to give a shout out to that. I think what
I
else?
I thought
Yeah,
the funny bits were mostly fairly funny. So, like, that
yeah.
was one. Um,
Oh, Madam Web getting raked through the coals tonight on multiple occasions. John Mulaney made a joke about it. Jimmy Kimmel made a joke about it. Pour one out for Dakota Johnson and that movie because it has become a punchline in Hollywood. And
I'm a defender of that movie,
yeah,
but that's fine. In a very ironic, but I actually enjoy it fully, kind of way. Um I would say what I think this show steered clear of is some of the worst. Every show, they feel the need to bring in comedy in order to keep it moving and keep people's energy up. In the past, this has led to things like, "Hey, there are snacks underneath your chair, attendees," or "Hey, there's a surprise theater of people who don't know they're coming to the Oscars and we're going to bring them over here." Do you remember these kind of
yeah,
bits
yeah,
in the
absolutely,
past?
yeah,
This time it was the tequila, which mercifully felt like it was shorter.
yeah,
And so I feel overall like there was less schlockiness and more people who are actually funny just being allowed to be funny. Like
indeed,
John Cena's comedic timing is what really sold that. John Mulaney was given quite a bit of time
yes,
to give
as
this
well
nonsensical,
deserved, well deserved.
but he actually nailed it, and he like actually had the delivery to earn that and to earn our attention.
Indeed,
So
indeed,
overall, I think that was a big part of it was basically the dialing down the gimmicks and dialing up just letting funny people be funny.
yeah. Also, I just want to, while we're talking about the broadcast still, and we can continue talking about the broadcast as well throughout this conversation, but I do want to give a shout out to Ryan Gosling performing "I'm Just Ken." Uh, it is one of the most joyful Oscars performances I can remember. Like just pure joy. The way he started it too, with sitting in his chair with a hat over his face and getting up and just in full command of the room. Like most of the best songs performances were on stage, and he had to go from the audience to the stage, which is difficult in my opinion. Walk around, do like multiple different kind of setups, and he
Well,
crushed
there's
it.
choreo, and then he also has
Yeah,
to hit all these different camera
yeah,
angles, and he actually physically jumps off the stage at one point. He
yeah.
has a guest guitarist come on and slash. There was a lot happening. I really thought his background as a Mouseketeer showed in that moment.
It was so wonderful, and I thought he did amazing. And it's not fair that Ryan Gosling is so talented, basically. But that was an amazing moment, and I think from what I can see from the online reaction, people really loved it. So
It was
that
an
was
exuberant performance for a largely exuberant film that was the most popular thing at the box office this year. So it was nice for the Oscars that it felt like it largely reflected my movie-going experience of the past year. There are times when the whole ceremony just feels like it's somehow missing the lived experience I had as a movie fan in the prior year.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally, totally. That's definitely been the case for the last, some of the last 5 or 10 years. Uh, Couple of other things to mention. There's been a few comments in the chat and also on Twitch about like somebody mentioned a tweet that was from Ashley Ray saying like, "Why do they have the most confused person read the Best Picture award?" Yeah, really odd reading of the Best Picture award by Al Pacino, who, like, I don't know if they told him to vamp or something,
I
or
I suspect, they really love to have an elder statesman give out the
yeah,
award, right? And sometimes it goes well, like when Harrison Ford gave out the award last year, and sometimes it does not go so well, like with Warren Beatty. But I think um the sense I had was that Jimmy Kimmel was literally padding the show
yeah,
out.
yeah, because what they're about to have like. They're about to read Best Picture, and they still have 15 minutes left, and they know it's not going to take that long. So he's like, "We got to figure out a way to add some more time to this thing." And so maybe he said to Al Pacino, "Hey, go on and vamp," and Al Pacino like didn't do that at all, really.
Well, he sort of did, but they also didn't read the nominees again, so that feels
That
like that could
that
have
was
taken a
extremely
full
odd.
another minute. Yes, I know we
Yeah.
see them throughout the course of the night, but anyway, hashtag choices were made, and, I really did feel, unfortunately, as a result of that, plus the Oppenheimer speeches for Best Picture seeming a little bit, unprepared or underprepared, that it really didn't end on a wonderful note.
Yeah, the the Best Picture speeches were not great. Like, I would say overall, there was a bunch of very solid speeches throughout the evening, and then the Best Picture speeches, it was, Emma Thomas, who's producer on the film, Chris Nolan's wife, and then one of the other producers, and, um, not it was not a it felt very anticlimactic as an ending for the evening, given that it's kind of not only one of the crowning achievements of their careers, but also like of cinema for the year. Sadly, a little bit anticlimactic all around for that part. Um, one thing I just want to mention real quick is the In Memoriam segment. We were talking about it, and everyone always complains about the In Memoriam segments. There's always ways for them to mess this up. They did a very elaborate interpretive dance this year when they were playing the video, and then also at the very end, they flashed this card where there's like, here's like 30 names that we couldn't show the faces of, and I just feel like the approach they chose just angers kind of everyone. Like it's the interpretive dance was very distracting. I don't mind the singing during it; that's fine. But like the interpretive dance, I think you and I both agreed was very distracting, right?
Well, the in memoriam, yes, but the biggest controversy is people who are family members of Academy members who feel that their person should have been listed in the segment, period, and weren't, right? That's
Yeah,
the number one controversy is who makes it in and who gets, kind of the crescendo big moments and the big, kind of gets their photo lingered on. And I think that their solve for that was pretty inelegant, Cormac McCarthy and Sinead O'Connor, and it's like, et cetera,
yeah, etc.
Um,
It's like here's a bunch of people we're gonna focus on, and then 30 other people,
but
and
and there's
and
a
and they take up this tiny text on your screen. You can barely read them, basically. Yeah,
yes,
so they did
yes,
it.
but
Yeah,
I think it is made worse by the other choice, which was to have a string quartet plus the eye open to the show the
right.
orchestra, plus Andrea Bocelli and the other singer whose name I unfortunately don't know, and the interpretive dance that starts out as 4 people, but really seems to expand to be like 30 people,
Yeah,
and so there is just so much to look at that you don't even know where your eye is supposed to go, and they were forced into this very wide angle for that text as a result, and so, um Maybe like 2 elements instead of 4 would have been good.
Yeah, agreed. Now, CD Matthew in the chat says, "For God's sake, can't people be prepared for these speeches instead of feigning surprise?" Now, I used to completely be on CD Matthew's side. So what happens a lot of times during the Oscars is people get on stage, they have no idea what the f they're doing, they fumble around, they waste their time, and then they end up giving a really shitty speech. Like that happens, I would say, 40 to 50% of the time at least. And I used to be really angry at these people because I'm like, hey, you have one opportunity to be in front of like 20, 30 million people. You should prepare for it. So that used to be me. I no longer feel that way. And the reason I no longer feel that way is because having spoken with a bunch of creatives in recent years, my sense is that there is some real superstitious stuff
Jinx
around
fear.
jinxing, around preparing a speech for the Oscars. Now, like that if you're preparing it, you're tempting fate, you're jinxing it. And I completely respect that because I also do not like tempting fate. And so like so while it's really sad and occasionally upsetting when people biff their time in the spotlight, I also get it. Like show business is made up of a lot of different superstitions and weird rituals, and yeah. So anyway, I just want to react to that comment in the chat.
I
Okay.
I guess. I think what I would just say in response to that is a bad speech is a laundry list of people to thank
Yes.
with a whole lot of, "Oh my god, I'm so overwhelmed," like,
Yeah.
chewing up your time. Um, so a great speech, which Robert Downey Jr. gave an incredible speech
Yeah.
because it was casual and charismatic and had ad libs and responses to other things that had happened that night, like,
Yeah.
could not have been entirely prepared. That's like 11 out of 10,
Yeah.
not everyone can do that. But if you are a person who is not great at giving speeches, of course you're gonna, like, forget who to thank, so you can't prepare a list, like, that isn't possible. And then the other thing is a really great speech needs to have a story in it. I
Mm-hmm.
will remember Davine, am I pronouncing her
Yeah.
name
I think that's right.
correctly?
Yep.
The little anecdote she pulls out where she says, "I was in this class and I was the only black student in this class, but my teacher saw something in me." Like that's it doesn't the story doesn't even need to be long. So just think of stories you wanna share, and you can't have those in your back pocket. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel frustrated because otherwise we don't get to know you, and hearing a list of names of people we do not know is incredibly, incredibly painful. It actually makes me less excited for you, and it is more difficult to connect. So,
I agree
you know,
completely. And yeah, basically your speech should be about something. Say something heartfelt, tell stories. But just a list of names, not great. Agreed completely. Also, when there's multiple people that go up for an award and they don't prep in advance which one of them is going to talk, brutal. Every single time it's brutal. It's like
like
yeah,
Oppenheimer, it was that with Emma Thomas. There was another producer whose name I didn't even quite catch, and then Christopher Nolan is like, "I'm good. I already talked. I don't even wanna say anything else."
yeah.
And so they just sort of wander away.
Yeah, that was weird. Christopher Nolan, I really wish he could have. I really wanted to hear from him again. But
Exactly. I
anyway,
wanted
yeah.
him to, like, bring it home and say something
Yes,
meaningful
bring
about
it home.
nuclear war.
Yes, bring it home. Anyway,
There's
that was
nothing
it. Yeah.
bigger.
Okay. All right. So those are a few observations on the ceremony. Let's talk about some of the awards. I think probably the biggest sort of winner of the evening was Oppenheimer. Right? Oppenheimer took
Mhm.
home a lot of the main awards. Awards like Best Picture, Best Directing, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, as well as
Cinematography
cinematography
and score.
and score and best editing as well, if I'm not mistaken.
So that's
Um,
7. Yeah.
yeah. So and possibly others that I haven't even mentioned, but yeah, that is a great set of awards. It's a movie. It's basically perfect for it's the perfect Oscar movie. It is a movie that was wildly successful. It has a great auteur filmmaker. It has some really beloved actors working in it, putting in really hard work. It's about something important.
But
And
it's also
so
historical epic, which I
historical
love.
epic. It's a movie that I don't know if I mentioned it was widely successful. Like it's a movie that lots of people saw. So this is like, man, the Oscars are back. It used to be. I remember when movies like Titanic and Return of the King won Best Picture, movies that made $1 billion that everyone saw, and we haven't had that in many many years, and now we have it again. And that is exciting for me as a film lover. Even if I didn't love Oppenheimer that much, it's just great to see a movie like that get recognized. I
You mean when
also,
there's, like, a white man who struggles morally with, the weights of his actions, but it's really about the individual man
yeah,
and
I've
how they
never,
shape history?
I've never heard that story. It's such a novel story, so I'm so glad that it's being
You
recognized
know,
finally.
I'm a little, like, meh about the whole idea of Oppenheimer winning so much. I'm not saying it's undeserving, but I also didn't have a movie this year, like, Everything Everywhere All at Once, where I'm, like, clasping my hands in the dark, like, whispering, like, "Dear God, if you just let Everything Everywhere All at Once have this Oscar, I will never ask you for anything again." We've had some really good smaller movies get an incredible amount of Oscar love in recent years, and so I feel good. I feel that the balance of the universe is fine.
Yeah, I want to say I loved Christopher Nolan's speech. Like Christopher Nolan has no idea who the f I am.
You
And
don't
probably
know.
probably will never know.
Is it because he's not on social media?
Well, I mean, he's been in a lot of TikTokers. If you're a high profile TikToker, he'll be in your TikTok. But sadly, I have not reached those echelons yet.
Hmm.
But I just have so much admiration for Christopher Nolan, so much appreciation for what he has done for the art of cinema, for the theatrical film going business, and yeah, I just admire the hell out of him. He's
Also for all
somebody.
the technicality that's behind it.
Yeah, the technical skill behind what he's doing. He is pushing the medium of cinema forward with what he does. And whether you love him or don't like him, or whether you like his movies or not, or any individual movie, he has helped to keep the idea of auteur driven, interesting, adult focused blockbuster filmmaking alive. And that's stuff that I live for. And so it's so wonderful to see him get recognized for Best Director after being nominated for 8 Academy Awards. This is the first time he's won. And I love the speech he gave. He said, like, cinema is only 100 years old. And there's other mediums like painting or whatever that are thousands of years old, and he's like, I don't, I don't know. I think he says something like, I don't know what my place in it is, but the fact that you think I'm a meaningful part of its history means the world to me. And
That
yeah,
was lovely.
it was
Yeah,
lovely, and
yeah.
I think he seemed, by the way, in all his interviews, he seems like a very cool guy. Seems like a cool guy. Like you think he's like a stuck up film snob, but no, he's like, I love MacGruber and I
He
love The
loves
Curse.
Fast and
I love
Furious.
Fast and Furious. He's like, this is like, you want to like, I want to like hang out with this guy. So I love Christopher Nolan as a creative force in the industry, and to see him finally get recognition, which he has deserved for many years, was lovely. I really appreciated that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
The
Um,
second most awarded film of the night was Poor Things, which won Best Actress, and then some below the line, 3 in a row. I think it won production
yeah,
design, costume, and, makeup and hairstyling
yeah.
because of the significant prosthetics that some of the cast were wearing. What did you think were you surprised that Yorgos Lanthimos has a quadruple Oscar-winning film and that it's this one?
First of all, I love what Kevin said in the chat. He listens to the Filmcast on vinyl. Dave, thank you for that. I love that. Yes, he demands one of his assistants to burn the Filmcast episodes onto vinyl, and then he listens to it that way. That I wanna. I'll dream of that. Um, your question about Poor Things. Certainly, the below the line awards are very well deserved. For those who don't know, Poor Things is like kind of a takes place in kind of a steampunk, fantastical version of London. So it's very colorful, very creative, and I think like all of the below the line stuff was deserved. But like that's the thing about this Oscars is there was very rarely a category that someone was nominated where it felt like they weren't deserving. That's definitely happened in other years where you've been like, why is that person or that movie in that category? That's almost not really been the case in this year's Oscars. As for the Best Actress win, that is a little surprising, I have to say. One of the reasons why people have said that Emma Stone might not win is because she just won not that long ago. She won like what 7 or 8 years ago for La La Land. She's relatively young, and so often it's like, okay, she's already won. Also, she's gonna have many other opportunities to win. Maybe we give the prize to somebody else that deserves it in the category, like Annette Bening or Sandra Hüller, who both have been doing great work for many, many, many years, if not decades.
Or the SAG
Um,
award winner, Lily Gladstone.
Lily Gladstone, right? But yeah, I mean, it's a really brave performance that she put in. She's obviously really well liked. I think between what she did in Poor Things and The Curse this year, it catapulted Emma Stone to the top of my list of an actress who is doing some of the most interesting work of her career right
Mm.
now. And so I have a great deal of admiration for Emma Stone. I know a lot of people were hoping Lily Gladstone would win this one. I personally was rooting for Sandra Hüller, who I thought was incredible in Anatomy of a Fall. Not a bad actress in this category, but yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise that Emma Stone won again because that's kind of rare. Now that said, sometimes like the Academy just decides they really like someone. Like I remember when Christoph Waltz won like a bunch of years, and it was like, really, Christoph Waltz all for for Inglorious Bastards, yes, but for some of the other movies, it's like, really? Anyway, maybe or Tom Hanks when Tom Hanks was like unstoppable. There was many years where or Meryl Streep. Maybe Emma Stone is like one of those actors who just everyone loves and is gonna be a force that dominates these awards in the future. So, Django, by the way, is the other movie that he won for that.
Mm.
Again, he was completely fine in Django. He was not bad in Django, but like I didn't think that was an Academy Award winning performance personally. And I love Christoph Waltz. I think he's great. I'm just saying like sometimes I think the Academy just decides they like someone, and I think Emma Stone has demonstrated she's one of those people. So
Well, when you have a night like this, when one film really dominates and then another takes a bunch of awards, that leaves actually very few additional categories to go around for some of the other favorites of the year. Did you have any things you were disappointed by not getting more love?
I mean, I think my favorite movie of the year, as well as one of yours, was Anatomy of a Fall. And I'm really glad that that movie won an award, right? It won for Best Screenplay. And Justine Triet wrote the screenplay along with her partner, I believe. And
Mhm.
so it was great that the mastermind of the movie, got to get up there and give a speech. And I thought that was lovely. But yeah, Anatomy of a Fall. In another year, that would have been like not that long ago. It was movies like Nomadland and Green Book or whatever that were like winning the Best Picture Oscar, like movies that like very few people had actually seen. And if Anatomy of a Fall had come out in 4 years ago, I think it would have been the story of the ceremony. It could have been like a big breakout hit, but instead it came out in like literally one of the biggest years for film in the last decade, 2023. So I think it got a little bit undersung there.
I
Yeah.
actually think Anatomy of a Fall, I did not have a not a lot of people had heard of it. It didn't get a theatrical release. Am I right about that? Or it was actually quite hard
No,
to
yeah,
see
yeah,
this
it was
film
hard to see in theaters, yeah.
for most of last year. And it's in 2.5 languages.
Yeah.
So all of this really works against its accessibility, but I think the story is so incredible and so haunting that people who have taken the trouble, but you almost have to like seek it out. You have to know you want to see it in order to go see it or find a way to stream it. Um, I do love that movie. It was probably my favorite movie of last year, but I thought it got sort of the right amount of recognition. Unfortunately for me, because it was in Best Original Screenplay that it won its Oscar, it had to knock out my other favorite movie of the year,
Yeah.
which was only nominated for, I believe, one Oscar, and that was Past Lives
Yeah.
by
Indeed.
director Celine Song.
Yeah,
Ugh.
Past Lives was also nominated for Best Picture, by the way. So
Okay, yes,
yeah.
but that felt like a very, very, very long shot.
That was a long shot. I don't think anyone thought Past Lives was gonna win Best Picture, but hey.
5 months ago, I felt like it was increasing in momentum. People had not forgotten about a film that had come out relatively early in 2023. I do think it's haunting, like, the concept that's in it really stays with you.
Mhm.
Um, and yet I did not feel like it was gaining any steam through the season. It did really well at the Independent Spirit Awards, but,
I mean, I think Celine Song, this is her first film. To be nominated for Best Picture and Best Screenplay with your first film, incredible achievement. She's gonna get so many more opportunities to win awards. I am not worried about
I'm
that.
not this
But
is not the, like,
yeah,
Celine Song career consolation, space. What I'm trying to say is this movie that already exists, I wanted to see rewarded just a little bit more.
absolutely,
But there were
absolutely.
only certain places where it particularly stood out. There were another first-time winner, Cord Jefferson
Yeah.
for American Fiction, um, which that felt strangely kind of like an upset. What did you think?
I don't think it was an upset in the sense that I think a lot of people were expecting that it was one of the it might not have been the favorite, but it was one of the favorites. I do want to highlight Cord's speech though. So first of all, Cord Jefferson has had a rather remarkable career. He used to be a writer at Gawker, Gawker.com, then made the transition into being a television writer, has written for shows like Watchmen, which is an incredible TV show, and then made this movie. And I thought it was worth noting that during Cord Jefferson's speech, he talked about how hard it was to get this film made, and he kind of referred to how many no's he got. And here's the thing: if you've seen American Fiction, that does not look like an expensive movie. No offense to American Fiction, it's totally competent from a it looks fine. It doesn't look spectacular, but it doesn't look bad. But it does not look like a particularly expensive movie. And so I can't imagine that it had a massive budget. And I think it seemed like he went through a really tough time to even get the small budget to make that movie. And his speech was about how risk averse Hollywood has become. And I think it's well taken that even though he can get recognized for a movie like American Fiction, there's not like 100 American Fictions getting made that people can check out at theaters every week. Like it's actually kind of become increasingly rare for a movie like that to ever be made, if not released. And so I think that is worth noting because most people, and he explicitly called this out. He's like, I don't want to sound bitter, or I don't want to sound vengeful, or vindictive, or whatever was the word he used. Most people don't talk too much about the difficulties of the business during the speech, their like triumphant moment. And he was somebody who chose to highlight it. And I think it is a really hard business right now. It's very difficult to get anything made that's risky or challenging or interesting. And we should listen to people like Cord Jefferson. So anyway,
I did see his Independent Spirit Awards, or is it called the Spirit Awards? What are they called?
yeah, the
The
Independent Spirit Awards. Yeah.
He won there, and in his, speech, he said, "Oh, you're all clapping now, but I know you all passed on this film." Like, it was a much more direct, kinda,
Hmm.
like, Shiv feeling, so I understood
Hmm.
why he was trying to dial that back a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but, even
And,
though
and and let's pause there for a moment, Joy. I think that's got to be such a weird feeling to like have shopped your movie to a dozen producers. Every single one says no. You like put it on your credit cards, or whatever. Do something extreme to get the movie made, and then you get all these awards, and everyone's like, "Bravo!" Also, I knew this movie was great back in the day. Like that's got to be infuriating, right? Like that when people like maybe it's very likely some of them tried to like claim credit for his victory, and he's just like he's not having any of that, and I appreciate that energy. So.
well, I think that is part of why even if the win didn't feel unexpected, it felt like he had an underdog quality, just like Davine's story felt like it had an underdog quality, even though she had just crushed the entire award season and swept every award there was. Um, I am curious what you thought about The Zone of Interest, Sandra Hüller's other Oscar-nominated film this year, also winning.
So the Zone of Interest won for a couple of awards.
It won for
It won
Best
for Best International
International
Film and
and Best
Best
Sound.
Sound. Uh, I think the sound is really an interesting story because a lot of people were expecting Oppenheimer would win. Uh, I posted on Threads that, oh wow, this is a big upset that the Zone of Interest won for sound, and a lot of people were like, upset? What are you talking about? The sound was amazing. I'm like, look at the betting markets. Like, very few people thought that Zone of Interest was the favorite going into this evening. But Zone of Interest, for those who don't know, is a movie that takes place just outside the Auschwitz concentration camp. And during the course of most of the movie, you never really see what's going on inside the camp. Um, you basically don't see any of the atrocities, but you hear them the whole time. There's a whole other movie happening in the background the entire movie. You're watching Zone of Interest. And so it's a fascinating use of sound to kind of make the point that the film is trying to make. And so if any movie is going to be Oppenheimer, I think that is a very worthy choice. Somebody on Threads responded to my thread and said, like, consider Oppenheimer and Zone of Interest. In one movie, you hear everything, and in one movie, you hear nothing. And I thought that was an interesting way of thinking about it. But anyway, yes, Zone of Interest and Best International Film. Now, to win Best International Film, what did it have to beat? It had to beat Perfect Days and Society of the Snow and The Teacher's Lounge and Io Capitano. I mean, I personally liked. Zone of Interest, honestly, is probably my least favorite movie of that category.
Really?
Yeah, but it's it's still a really interesting movie that's worthy of attention. So I don't mind that it won, but yeah, I mean, Society of the Snow is like incredible movie watching experience. Deeply moved me, and I know that's how some people feel about Zone of Interest. So, but Zone of Interest does not reach me in the same way. So, anyway,
Can we just pause on this category? Because often this is one where people discover movies they wouldn't otherwise
yeah,
know about. Society of the Snow is streaming right now on Netflix.
yeah,
Plus, there is a documentary about how they made it because it was done under such harsh conditions in the snow. Um, and I think you found it to be just a harrowing but really thrilling film from start to finish. Um, I also saw Perfect Days. It is not harrowing. Well, mostly not. It's a very gentle, small film in some ways by Wim Wenders, even though it was
yeah.
submitted by Japan. And I thought it was incredible. It's really stuck with me. Um, and you really liked. So that one is. I think Perfect Days. It's actually a little more difficult to see. I think you may have to purchase it. Is that right?
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
Teacher's Lounge, is one that I think if you like sort of the moral ambiguity and the thorniness of ethical conflicts and as we all try to navigate really difficult situations today, it's a small story in some ways, but it's about how our big societal problems show up in really small everyday settings. What Teacher's Lounge can be found on?
I think it's also on video on demand at this point. Yeah,
Okay.
great. All of these are great movies. You should seek them out. Google them. Many of them are available and accessible, so like they're worth watching.
And Future Majora says that Perfect Days is on Movie.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of the things. Kevin asked the question, did Anatomy of a Fall not qualify for that category? And the answer
The
is no.
story.
It's actually really painful because France decided to not submit Anatomy of a Fall. Like the country decides what movie to submit. And if they submitted Anatomy of a Fall for best international film, it's very possible it would have won. It would have gone up against Zone of Interest, and like so maybe Zone of Interest would still have won, but there's a huge chance it would have won. Instead, they submitted The Taste of Things, which was completely shut out and didn't even get nominated for anything. So
I think you and I are some of the only people that have seen The Taste of Things. It is a lovely, lovely
yes,
movie.
it's a
It
very
is,
reasonable movie to submit. It's not like they did a bad thing by submitting it,
but
um,
Anatomy of a Fall, like changed my life, and
yeah.
my life is pretty much the same after The Taste of Things. I just wanted to eat more French food.
Uh, GT Party in the chat says all of us strangers should have been nominated for several awards. I don't disagree. Also, a couple people pointing out that Killers of the Flower Moon won nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of like amazing work that went into Killers of the Flower Moon, and I think it was worthy in every one of the categories. Honestly, I think Leonardo DiCaprio should have been nominated for Best Actor as well.
Mm.
But this was just an extremely stacked year. Like all these movies are great, and so yeah. But Killers of the Flower Moon, I do think it's surprising that it didn't win anything, and particularly I think it had
The
the
below
best
the
chance of
line.
winning Yeah, Below the Line, but I think it had the best
Yeah.
chance of winning Best Actress for Lily Gladstone. Did not take that home, unfortunately. But yeah, and Below the Line too. It was nominated for uh,
Production
Best
design,
Production
costumes,
Design, cinematography, I think, right?
editing for
And
Thelma
editing, right?
Schoonmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are all very reasonable nominations. But sometimes you just I've been
Sometimes you
play.
get steamrolled by the weird movie about the girl who has a toddler brain.
Yes, that's correct. Sometimes I've been playing a lot of poker, and sometimes you pick up pocket kings, and that's really good, and sometimes you run into a monster hand like pocket aces, and it just happens sometimes. So,
Beautifully said.
all right, thank you. So let's see. All right, Daniel in the chat asks Joy, how did Anatomy of a Fall change your life? Any response to that, Joy?
Anatomy of a Fall, if you haven't seen it, is about a woman who is accused of murdering her husband, and you are given fragments of information from different people's perspectives and recollections over the course of the movie, and left as a viewer to kind of sift through that and try to determine what kind of meaning that gives to you. There is a pivotal scene that I will not describe in detail that comes up through the course of the sort of criminal proceedings around this death. There's definitely a death. The question is like, is it murder? Is it suicide? Is it an accident? Um, and I came away from that scene with a certain reading of what had occurred, but I could see it from the point of view of the characters in the scene who are basically, disagreeing with each other. And then I watched as the discourse of people I really respect all read that scene differently from me and each other, it felt like. And the truth is so, there are so many access points and so many views we can have that I think it can become overwhelming, the diversity of opinion, all of which is legitimate. But I think for such a relatively elegant, compact couple hours of film that's about a relatively simple plot, did she do it or did she not? Will she be found guilty? Will she not be found guilty? To bring up that much ambiguity, but justifiable ambiguity, not just confusion. It was actually incredibly powerful, and it made me sort of rethink how I go about my daily life, even. Or like, let's say Dave and I are having an argument. Maybe it makes me more open to believing that not only is there Dave's point of view, but there's like 100 other points of view that are possible.
Yeah. It was revealed in a post academy, like in the press room, that Justine Triet said that there's a song, um, a cover of 50 Cent's PIMP in the movie that is amazing. Like the way it's used is amazing. And apparently they were going to use Jolene as the song in the movie before, but they couldn't get the rights. So they used the steel drum rendition of PIMP instead, which is just like, it just gives you an appreciation of sometimes the stuff that becomes the most important parts of a movie happens completely by accident, or it happens because the filmmaker couldn't get what they wanted, right? That's often the case, and it was the case in Anatomy
I
of a
think
Fall
that's
as
a
well.
better choice, and I can't hear the song without thinking of this movie. It is
It
actually
is an
a
amazing.
haunting part of the soundscape of this movie.
You will never listen to PIMP the same way again after you watch Anatomy of a Fall. So, my favorite movie of 2023, Anatomy of a Fall. Check it out. It's available on video on demand. It's incredible and worthy of its awards. Okay, I want to take a quick moment to again. We have almost 500 people have tuned in to watch us talk about the Oscars. Thank you so much for joining us at youtube.com/Dave Chensky and on Twitch as well. I want to give a big shout out to all of my patrons at patreon.com/Dave Chen for their support and allowing me to do the stuff I do online. And also give a shout out to my newsletter, Decoding Everything, at decodingeverything.com, where I write about movies and TV and the Oscars and a bunch of other stuff. So be sure to subscribe there as well.
And Dave, will this video be available later for
I hope so. We will
if nothing
if
goes wrong
if I
technically?
can. I hope so. We'll see what happens. All right. I wanted to give a shout out to Best Visual Effects.
Yes. This was
So
so amazing.
Godzilla Minus One received one Academy Award nomination this year. For those who don't know, Godzilla Minus One, a Japanese Godzilla movie that came out of nowhere in late 2023. It was like a small movie that cost around $10-12 million to make. It ended up grossing over $100 million. This is the movie that could. It was one of my top 10 films of 2023. And it got nominated for one Academy Award, Best Visual Effects. It got nominated with The Creator, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, and Napoleon. All of those had great visual effects. Like, those are all fantastic movies with fantastic visual effects. And so it's like, okay, well, it's nice that they got nominated at all. That's lovely. For them to win it, mind-blowing. Like, it's just like, whoa, what a success story. And this is one of the few movies where the director of the film is on the visual effects team. So the director, was technically nominated for an Oscar for Godzilla Minus One. And those folks looked adorable, winning and being so excited. And it seemed like they
Were each clutching a little Godzilla. Did I Google mini Godzilla figurine immediately after this so I can walk around carrying a Godzilla? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Is this the first time a outside of the Hollywood system movie has won for best visual effects?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that one.
It feels like it could be.
Yeah.
And then certainly it would have been considered the underdog in terms of budget compared to these other films. The Creator was done pretty affordably too,
Yeah.
relatively speaking, right?
Around like $80 million is what I understand for The Creator. So, yeah.
But for Godzilla Minus One, the number I have heard, which I can't even believe is possible, is $15 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
15.
Nick Gambo in the chat says they were having a blast with the whole thing. A lot of people pointing out the Godzilla shoes that people wore. Those were fun, so
yes.
Yeah.
They really just seem like a group of people that really, really love Godzilla. So there was like a joyfulness to it. And I will thank
yeah, go ahead. Finish.
I will thank the producers for this one thing. The person who gave the speech clearly struggled to articulate some of the things in a timely way because English is not their native language. And you could, I think, see one of the other recipients from the team kind of mouthing the words to try to like cue him on what to say. Did you see that? Did you pick up on her standing next to him?
Yeah.
They could, in past ceremonies, they would have played that person off so fast.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they didn't eventually kind of try to move them along, but I did feel overall like they were more respectful because they gave each nominee, it felt like a little more time.
Yeah.
Especially if you are feeling overwhelmed or if English is not your native language or you have something complicated or important to say, like the winners for 20 Days in Mariupol, the best documentary. Those things just got a little more air, and I really, really appreciated it as an inclusivity.
I agree. In the past, there have been multiple times during the course of the evening where it's been a painful playoff, where it's like, oh, this person clearly has more important stuff to say, and they're being played off. That basically never happened tonight. There were, a couple times the music started playing, but like there are very few instances in which I feel like somebody was trying to say something important and wasn't given the proper chance to. So, and I think they probably took a bunch of steps to make that happen. There were very few extraneous bits in the broadcast. They did this thing where they had presenters do 2 awards at once, which helped with like the transition time. They've done that in the past too, but like it was just a well-run broadcast. I'm
want
impressed.
to hear the guy who accepts for Godzilla say, when I was 40 years ago, I grew up watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind to Steven Spielberg, who was in the room.
Yeah.
And I never dreamed I could even make a movie that would be accepted in Hollywood. That's like really moving. So
it is. All right. David Jock asks, what did you think of the mini shout out to Stunts? I agree. This was very weird.
Very weird.
So for those who don't know, at one point in the evening, I don't remember who it was. Like they got up they're like,
it was Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt did the Oppenheimer.
Oh right, they did that, and they're like, "Hey, stunts are amazing," and then they play a little clip package about how amazing stunts were, and that is odd because for those who don't know, for many years, stunt people have been trying to get a best stunt work or best stunts category at the Oscars and have failed. there are no, as far as I understand, imminent plans for a best stunt category at the Oscars. So I thought, we were watching it together, Joy, and I think we thought, oh,
I thought it
maybe
was gonna be a
it's going to be a
surprise
surprise, like, oh, they're
announcement.
announcing it best stunt, but nothing
Yeah.
happened. So it's just like, shout out to stunt. I guess this is kind of like what you get instead of the awards is like, we'll give you a little shout out to the stunts, which is like kind of a waste. Like, just either give them the award category or don't. Meanwhile, they're doing a best casting category next year, which again, I think casting is a skill that requires a lot of work, and I think it should be recognized. But so does stunts, and also one of them is way more visually interesting to watch, and might be more interesting for the telecast. So yeah. Anyway, what else to mention
I'm just
in
gonna
this?
mention a couple of other
Yeah,
highlights
yeah.
that
Go
I
ahead.
thought stood out. Um, it was more obvious in the SAG Awards, but they did talk about the difficult they alluded several times to the difficult year,
Yeah.
right? And the difficult year meaning multiple strikes on multiple from different unions. And so I thought it was actually quite lovely that they brought out people who had not crossed the picket line on stage. Do you remember what I'm talking about at
Yeah, they
the
brought a bunch of below the line people onto stage at the beginning. Jimmy Kimmel did it at the beginning, right? Yeah.
Yes, and I actually thought, the monologue was not terribly memorable, but it was fine, it was good enough, it was funny
Yeah.
enough, but, I thought he really nailed, that Hollywood is a union town of people who seem like they've lost their minds and, like, are actually, in many ways, very strange, prickly creatives with, like, overinflated sense of self, and yet it is still a union town, and so I really, no, it's not the same as working a lathe, in a steel mill or whatever. But I think that he was trying to both say we are very proud to be union, and while acknowledging like some of the absurdities of what that union probably entails specifically. But it has provided a living in the arts for many of the people that we know, and most of the arts in America you cannot make a living at, and certainly not at this scale. And it is something worth fighting for and protecting. And so it was great. I thought it was great to see the union acknowledgement.
Yeah. I want to also acknowledge one of the most powerful speeches of the evening was the 20 Days in Maripol winning for Best Documentary. For those who don't know, it's about the Ukraine-Russian war, and the director said a few things that I thought were really powerful. First of all, he said, "I would, this is the first Ukrainian Oscar ever, but I would give it up if it meant that this war never happened." Which is like, it must
Of
be
course.
so
Yeah.
so tragic to have won this amazing, like achieve this amazing thing, but it is because of just horrifying things that are happening back at home. That's why this award is being given. And I can imagine that must be very leave one feel that must leave one feeling very conflicted. And I think his speech reflected that. And he also said something along the lines of how with something like the Russia-Ukraine war, there's many different sides of the story, and there's different versions of events, and there's Putin's version, and there's um, the president of Ukraine, whose name,
Volodymyr Zelensky.
yeah, Vladimir Zelensky, his version of events and other people's version of events, and he's like, and that um, this award kind of gives him the opportunity to set the record straight, like it is this being like a recognized story. He says, "quote Cinema forms memories, and memories form history." End quote. And I appreciated that. It's like there is something important about the fact that the Academy recognized this movie, gave it a broader platform, and that it is kind of like a prominent version of what events are unfolding. I should point out, by the way, that apparently this movie is available to stream online. You can go, I think it's on PBS. You can watch it online, and I would recommend people to check it out. So 20 days,
Um,
20 Days in Maripol is the name of the movie. So
I am really the Oscars are accused sometimes of being self-serious, but it was great to see a collection of documentaries nominated that are pretty serious in purpose and not necessarily um, the most popular documentary titles of the year.
Yeah.
I fully expected that still the Michael
Yes.
J. Fox story would be nominated and win, and that it would become, because there are so many celebrity-focused stories. Not to say those stories aren't interesting or tell us something about the human condition, but they're certainly not made under the conditions that 20 Days in Mariupol
Yeah.
was made under.
Yeah. I think the the branch of the Academy that votes in the documentaries, um, they don't go for that star effing stuff, like they go for the hard
Hard-hitting,
hitting
journalistic,
journalistic
yeah,
stuff, right? There's
yeah.
no like Michael J. Fox or David Beckham stuff in that category. They kind of go their own way. So yeah. Uh, Also, CD Matthew says such a strong start to the In Memoriam segment with Navalny excerpt. I agree. Like that was very powerful for them to play that. Philip,
Navalny won last year, and
yeah,
that is, really eerie, I think, to think about now. I watched it last year, but, it's on HBO Max, if anyone
yeah.
wants to see that.
Max the one to watch for HBO. I think you mean to say.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Max the one to watch for 30 Day Fiancé and Navalny.
We are wrapping up here, so just probably a couple more minutes of stuff to discuss. So if you have any questions or anything you want to hear us discuss, now is the time to mention in the chat. I do want to say again a big shout out to patreon.com/Dave Chen and for all the people that support me over there. If you want to support what I do online, patreon.com/Dave Chen is the best way to do that. Also, a podcast recording of this conversation will be made available at patreon.com/Dave Chen. So thanks to everyone there who supports the show. And subscribe to Decoding Everything at decodingeverything.com to get my thoughts delivered right to your inbox. Anything else, Joy? One other
Yeah,
thing that came. Yeah, go ahead, please.
um I'll just point out one highlight for me and one low light. One highlight that we haven't talked about yet was seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito come out. It was sort of previewed, and you could tell from silhouette who these two people were. And then they actually had a bit about Batman, and Michael Keaton was there. Like, it went in some unexpected places. It wasn't just a, hey, these two people are back together. Uh, Sometimes when the Oscars puts two people together who simply have worked together, they don't have a lot to say to each other, and it's just like it feels a little bit perfunctory. I thought that was genuinely fun. Um, the probably low light of the evening for me was the Flaming Hot Cheetos song, which is something like "I'm on fire with love" or "I'm on fire with desire" to launch a Cheetos secondary product line. And it is from a movie called Flaming Hot. Is that
Yes.
correct? Which is about the creation of the Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So it's like the movie Air or the movie Blackberry. It's a corporate saga. I'm sure it's perfectly fine film. Didn't know it had an original song that's surprisingly earnest. Um, I feel like the best original song category often has one pretty weird entry, and then we have to all listen to several minutes of that together. But they brought out these children to be in a choir together and sing the Flamin' Hot Cheetos song. And I really was still reeling from the Ukraine speech that was very powerful, like about 10 minutes earlier in the broadcast. And I really felt bad for the filmmaker who's like, people I know were, like, dismembered and I had to film it, like, that's approximately the tone. Maybe not literally people he knew, but, and at the same time, I'm on the stage with this shit. And I just maybe sometimes there can be, more tasteful presentations of even very schlocky material. What do you think?
Well, you're not even bringing up the fact that the Flaming Hot movie was based off of lies. Like it's the story of this guy who like worked his way up the Flaming Hot, Cheetos ladder is not true. And so it was based off of it's like foundation is a lie. And
Wait, I know it's a lie because he made it up to make himself sound like he was a bigger deal than he was at
yeah.
Frito-Lay. But, like, when they made the movie, they didn't know, and it's since come out, or is it the story of him as a fabulist? No one knows because no one's seen the Flamin' Hot
It's
movie.
not a story about him as a fabulous. That would actually be the more interesting story. Is how a guy talked his way into becoming the Flaming Hot guy, even though he wasn't. That would be an interesting story. That is not the story that is in the movie. So, yeah.
Woof. Okay. Well, it really took my breath away for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanna add about the
Well,
night?
shout out to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito doing a bit about Batman with Michael Keaton in the audience, who, by the way, is looking great. Too bad we're never going to really see Michael Keaton as Batman again. I would assume after The Flash performed disastrously at the box office
We
in
got
2023.
enough return of we got enough of him, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
through that outing.
yeah. Carlos points out that they played the Flaming Hot movie at the White House. It was premiered there. So, yep. That movie has definitely gone way farther than anyone thought it would. So,
I was in, a couple of group chat thread things while the Oscars were running, and the non-Americans trying to comprehend what is a Cheeto and what is a Flamin' Hot Cheeto was really delightful.
and you're giving awards to this? You're nominating this thing for awards? Uh,
It
what
lost to my favorite of the songs, which is the What Was I Made For song by Billie Eilish, so justice was served in the end.
I think the only other thing, okay, Dave and Joy, where does this Oscars rank for you in the past 10 to 20 years? I would say this is up there. This is in the top quartile of Oscars
What
broadcasts that I've seen.
what are your criteria?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of like memorable moments, interesting broadcast that was engaging, like those are the things I would point out. But yeah,
Easily top quartile in terms of just competent
yeah,
production that kept my attention and didn't feel like it was unearnedly wasting my time. But in terms of like things that there's also like when you're really emotionally invested in a film and you really want to see it win, that has happened twice for me in the last 10 years. And I'm still riding the high from those. So
yeah. A couple of other things to point, just a few other random things to close out on. And I do want to say thanks to everyone for tuning into this. I think this is the biggest crowd we've ever had on this channel before.
more than
For
last
any event.
year.
I don't remember, like, what we did last year was we broadcast live throughout the whole thing last year,
Right,
and we
right.
decided to not do that this year because we didn't think it would be interesting enough. And I think we were right in the sense that not because the broadcast, the telecast was bad, but just that most of the things that people thought would win did win. And we did have some debate about whether Everything Everywhere All at Once would win Best Picture, which is like still remarkable to think about when you consider it. So, okay, couple of other things that people point out in the chat that I want to mention. One is that Nick asks, "Is Dune 2 a front runner for Oscar next year?" I think so.
I
I
have
think
wondered that
it
too.
is gonna, like, I would be shocked if Dune 2 is not nominated for Best Picture. It's
Won't
gonna
it
be
win all this below the line stuff
Yeah, it's gonna be
at a
one of the
minimum?
most financially successful movies of the year. It is hugely critically acclaimed. People love the movie. It's going to be. It is already a front runner, I would say. But
Well,
we don't
I
need
mean,
to.
you have a better awareness of what else is coming that would be in contention with it.
Yeah, well, Furiosa be another one. So we'll see. But
Hmm.
honestly, this year is going to be a weird year for movies. Like, the strikes happened last year. We're going to be feeling the impact of that this year. So, um, okay. A couple of the things people mentioned that I did want to call out. Yeah, it's incredible that Billie Eilish is the youngest two-time Oscar winner after tonight. That is amazing. Very well deserved. And I do also want to call out something Billie Eilish said in her speech that I thought was really was worth noting, which she made reference to, like, one of her teachers who she hated and who kicked her ass, but who
No, she didn't say
nonetheless.
that. That's not what she said.
Okay, what did she say? It was somebody who, like, gave her a hard time, basically, right?
She said, "Thank you to, like, my piano, my choir teacher
Yeah,
or piano guitar." I don't
yeah,
remember what the 2
yeah.
teachers were. "Thank you to," and then she names one of them, and then she says the other one, and she says, "You didn't like me, but you did your job," or
Mhm,
something like that.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
I don't think it was kicked her ass
Okay, okay.
necessarily, but
That I thought it was like she didn't like her, like Billie Eilish didn't like her. That was my perception,
oh,
um,
okay. Well, we
but
can
anyway, sorry, the Oscars just happened. You didn't like me, but you were good at your job. Okay, Mark in the chat is saying that that's true. So anyway, uh, I guess I just wanted to call that out because oftentimes uh, great art or great artists are not created in very smooth, comfortable environments. Like, it's often there's a lot of creative friction, uh, and and I think that often it's the people who you clash with the most that end up helping to form who you are. And I thought that was like
Hmm.
it was a very brief moment. It was like took like 2
Yeah.
seconds. But I did think it was notable.
Well, it sort of reminded me then, like, maybe 30 minutes later, we have the Best Documentary Short, which went to a film called The Last Repair Shop, which you can
Yeah.
find for free on YouTube. It's about 20-25 minutes, and it's a lovely little story about, the people who repair instruments in the LA Unified School District, if I'm naming that correctly. Um, but, I thought that was a really good speech with a point. They basically said LA is one of the final school districts that gives free and freely repaired instruments to children. And the point is not that we're making great musicians, is that we're making great humans through this process. And I just thought that was really, really um, lovely, lovely, especially to a room of people that are creatives, some of whom are incredibly famous and well paid, many of whom are not.
I want to mention a couple of other things that happened, or two awards specifically. Miyazaki won, and also Wes Anderson won. Arguably, two of the most talented working directors today alive. And
Mm.
it's a bummer that neither of them could be bothered to
It's
show up.
not a bummer. This is below Hayao Miyazaki to show up for something like that. Do you think that he, as an environmentalist, wants to do the damage to the Earth to get on a jet to get
That's
to
fair.
LA?
Also, something else that was not cool with the Academy, which is like this is a thing that happens every freaking year, is the Academy makes animation seem like a category for children,
That was very
and
strange. That was
it's not the first time
upsettingly strange.
it
Yes.
happens all the time. It's happened multiple times where they're like, in fact, I believe if I recall correctly, it was even more insulting last year. So like every year they're like, okay, these are the ones your kids are going to know about. It's like, screw you, Academy. Like animation is not just for kids. There's tons of adult animation right now. Find a better bit to introduce animation because whatever you're doing right now, it's not working, and I hate it. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Agreed.
and then yeah, Wes Anderson. I mean, come on, Wes, like tape something, tape a thing. It's just weird to have a bunch of categories where like that person's not here, so we're accepting the award on their behalf. It's like maybe they could have taped something for if they won. I don't know. I don't know what the rules are. So
Do you think Wes Anderson doesn't want this award? Do you know what I mean? Like, he's the heavy in best live action short. People
mhm.
will vote for it just because they know who he is. He's got a budget of like 100x what the other live action shorts have. I just it just feels like so unfair. Like, of course he's gonna win. And so they're not
I
even that short,
I
honestly.
feel
So
bad for the other live action short nominees. It's like you not only can you imagine showing you showed up, and then the guy who won, who's like Wes Anderson, who like walked away with it, didn't even show up. Anyway, kind of sucks.
Nine
Kind
Nine
of
and
sucks.
Waipo or whatever that movie is, it Nine Nine
Yeah,
and Popo
yeah,
or Nine Nine
that's
and
right.
Waipo? Um, that's the best live action short typical. Like, it looks like it's
Yeah,
maybe like 500K of budget, and so I just feel like it violates the spirit of it, and maybe
five.
Wes Anderson
Maybe remove one or two zeros off that. But yeah, go ahead.
um, so, maybe Wes Anderson wants to be nominated for things that are his actual, like, big pieces of work
I'm
that
guessing he was also busy shooting something or doing something else. So
I'm sure. I actually I do really there are a few of his pieces his films that I think are genuine masterpieces that really, really stand the test of time. Don't line up with typical Academy of tastes, but, could the Royal Tenenbaums have been nominated for cinematography? I wish that had happened.
Cersei in the chat says, since Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth accepted an Oscar on Miyazaki's behalf, in some way, hasn't Furiosa already won?
Hmm.
I think we all know the answer is
Hmm.
yes.
Hmm. That's
That's
deep.
a big question: is how good is Furiosa, and will it be nominated for Best Picture? Because I believe Mad Max Fury Road was nominated for Best Picture, if I'm not
It
mistaken. So
was, and
yeah,
that was the year it won a surprising number, like 5 or 6 below the line things, and might
yeah,
even have had the most Oscars that year as a result.
yeah. Gulliver Bear asks, "Do you think Spider Verse didn't win because of the controversy over how the directors treated the animators?"
I've heard this theory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unclear, unclear. The thing is, that movie is freaking amazing. Like uh, people can disagree about this, but I would argue that Spider Verse actually pushes the art of animation forward Boy and the Heron, incredibly well done, well animated film, beautiful. And definitely Miyazaki's trying some new techniques that he hasn't done before in that movie. But Spider-Verse is like a whole other level in terms of what it is attempting. And it is surprising to me that that movie did not get recognized. But Miyazaki's also a genius. So,
I
it's.
feel like it was a little of a lifetime achievement award for Miyazaki. Do you think? Because it's not his most beloved film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he only became sort of better known in the States towards the end of his career. So it feels a little bit like wanting to reward the body of work.
At the same time, he's also won before, if I'm not mistaken. So this is his second Best Animated Film award.
Was the other for Spirited Away?
I am not 100% sure. Yeah, Spirited Away. That's right, in 2002. So
Because I think that year it might have
yeah,
also been nominated for Best Picture, and that was a big deal to even be nominated.
yeah. Okay, I think that's it. I think we're done. Thank you so much for tuning in. A podcast recording of this conversation will be made available at patreon.com/DaveChen. I want to say thank you to Joy for watching this broadcast with me and chatting with me about it, and all of you for tuning in and providing some really interesting commentary and chat and questions during this. And also, I love that there's been over 400 people in this chat. My YouTube channel has been a little bit bereft recently, and I've been really skeptical about whether I should keep investing in something like YouTube, but honestly, I think I'm going to because of this broadcast. So thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today. Thank you, Joy. And subscribe to Decoding Everything to hear more of my thoughts on the Oscars. Good night.
Good night.